All right, let's go through paper 3, which is the theory core option for biology. And this is Cambridge IGCSE from Cambridge International Examinations, May-June 2018, and the code is 0610/31. All right, let's get started.
Excellent. Shall we start then? Bring it.
1A. The boxes on the left describe the processes carried out by cells. The boxes on the right contain the names of the cells that carry out these processes. Draw one straight line from each box on the left to a box on the right to link the processes to the cell type. Draw 6 lines. An example has been done for you. Okay, so there are, you can't see them all on the screen at the same time, but there's 7 boxes on the left and 6 boxes on the right, and you need to draw 6 lines because one of them has been done for you. So you need to draw a line from each one of these things, even though obviously one will be doubled up. Okay, so which one has the transport of oxygen? Well, transport of oxygen is done by the red blood cell. Transport of sucrose, as it says, is the phloem sieve tube element. Phagocytosis is done by white blood cells. Okay, blood clotting. Now that is the responsibility of the platelets. Production of glucose. Production of glucose is done by the palisade mesophyll cells in plants. Antibodies are formed also by white blood cells. So there's lymphocytes make antibodies and phagocytes do phagocytosis. They're both white blood cells. And absorption of mineral ions from the soil, well, that is done in the root hair cell. All right. B, figure 1.1 shows a section through part of a leaf. All right, so this is figure 1.1. 1. On figure 1.1, draw a label line to identify one guard cell and label it G. Okay, so the guard cell, we have 4 guard cells, so let's put it from here. Let's say that is G. So 1, 2, 3, 4 guard cells there. And then we need to draw a label line to identify one of the stomata and label it S. So the stomata is multiple for stoma, and they're the holes. So the stomata is the hole, S. All right, so there's 2 stomata. 2, state one function of stomata. Okay, stomata is used for diffusion of water vapor. For diffusion of water vapor out of the leaf. Water doesn't go into the leaf via the stomata, it goes in via the root hairs at the bottom of the plant, on the roots. It can also be used for oxygen going into the plant, for carbon dioxide going out of the plant, or you could say transpiration, which is the diffusion of water vapor out of the leaf. Okay, so any of those, but only one. It only wants one. 2A, define the term sexual reproduction. Okay, sexual reproduction is the fusion of 2 gametes to form a zygote. Sexual reproduction is the fusion of 2 gametes to form a zygote. You can't just say the sperm and the egg because plants have pollen in eggs, pollen in ovules. Okay, and the other thing about sexual reproduction, this is a 3-mark question, is it produces genetically different offspring. It produces genetically different offspring. So 1 mark is basically saying it's a fusion of 2 gametes, another one forming a zygote, and then another one saying it's genetically different offspring. B, figure 2.1 shows some organs in the body of a man. Okay, here's figure 2.1. 1. Complete table 2.1 by writing in the names of the parts labeled A to D in figure 2.1. Okay, let's go up above. So A, that's the rectum. B, that's a sperm duct. C, that's the urethra. And D, that's the ureter. All right, urethra and ureter are very similar words, so they have to be spelt exactly as they should be. You can't have any spelling errors. All right, so we can double check to see if we got those labels right, to see if they do what they're supposed to do. Okay, so A, we said A was the rectum. Now does the rectum transport feces? Yes. B, we said, was the sperm duct. And does it transport sperm? Yes. C, we said, was the urethra. And does that transport sperm and urine? Yes. And D, we said, was the ureter. And does that transport urine only? Yes. So that should be good. 2. On figure 2.1, draw a label line to the prostate gland and label it P. All right. So the prostate gland is right here. So we label it P. C. State the function of the scrotum. All right. So the scrotum has a couple functions. It basically is used to hold and protect the testes, or it's to maintain the testes at a lower temperature than the body. It's only a 1-mark question, so you should only put down one thing. So it's to maintain testes at a lower temperature than the body, because they're outside of the body, so they can keep the testes cooler. Question 3. This question is about neurons and reflex actions. Choose words from the list to complete the sentences. Each word may be used once, more than once, or not at all. So neurons are cells that are part of the nervous system. There are 3 types of neuron involved in a simple reflex action: a sensory neuron, a relay neuron, and a motor neuron. Nerves conduct electrical impulses. These are transmitted from one neuron to the next at junctions called synapses. And a reflex action is automatic, coordinated, and fast. There we go. That's it. 4A. Respiration releases energy. Write the word equation for aerobic respiration. So aerobic means it requires oxygen. Oxygen plus a fuel plus glucose produces carbon dioxide plus water. There we go. That's it. B. Figure 4.1 shows the average daily energy requirement for different groups of males and females. All right, so you can't see the entire graph on the screen at once. So at the bottom, it's the description of the group. And on the side, it's the energy requirement, average energy requirement in kilojoules per day. The dark lines are the males. The light lines are the females. There we go. Let's see what the questions ask. 1. State the average energy requirement for a 5-year-old female. All right. Okay, so a 5-year-old female right here. Bring it across. There we go. So here we go. So how much is 1 square? If we go up, we have 1,000 kilojoules per day divided by 5 squares. That equals 200 kilojoules per day per square. So every time you go up 1 square, you go up 200 kilojoules. So this is 6,200 kilojoules per day. So that's 6,200 kilojoules per day. Units are already in there, so you don't have to worry about that. 2. An 11-year-old male receives only 8,000 kilojoules per day for 4 months. Use the data in figure 4.1 to suggest 2 ways this could affect him. All right, so an 11-year-old male should be getting 9,000 kilojoules per day, but they're actually getting 8,000. So they're not getting enough. So they don't receive enough energy. Lots of things can happen. They can lose weight and become tired, fatigued. So they could have lost weight, loss of weight, and be tired, fatigued. Other things you could say that the normal growth would be reduced, so they might not grow as much as they should, and they can be more susceptible to infections because for males the energy input is too low and it's below what they need. C. Use the data in figure 4.1 to make 3 comparisons between the energy requirements of individuals aged 17 years and adults. So you have to have 3 comparisons and you have to use the data. That means you need to do a data quote. All right, let's look at this. All right, so you don't need to compare absolutely everything that you could possibly compare because there's only 3 things that you should write down. Okay, so here's the 17-year-old males, 17-year-old females, inactive adults, inactive male adults, inactive female adults, active male adults, and active female adults. All right, so if we look at their numbers, the 17-year-old male, that's 10,800 kilojoules, and the 17-year-old female is 7,800 kilojoules. The inactive male adult is 10,000 kilojoules, and the inactive female adult is 8,200 kilojoules. And the active male adult is 11,600 kilojoules, and the active female adult is 9,200 kilojoules. All right, so using those numbers, you can just say which ones are more, which ones are less. I'll say that the 17-year-olds, both male and female, require more energy than the inactive adults. And the 17-year-olds require less energy than the active adults. All right, and then you need to put a data quote to support this. So you can say a 17-year-old male requires, say, 10,800 kilojoules per day, while an active adult male requires 11,600 kilojoules per day. Okay, so that's all you're doing. We'll just write that down. So 17-year-olds require more energy than inactive adults, and 17-year-olds require less energy than active adults. So a 17-year-old male requires 10,800 kilojoules per day, while an active adult male requires 11,600 kilojoules per day. You have to put in the units, or else they just ignore the answer. It doesn't count for anything without the units. D. Yeast cells can respire anaerobically. Biotechnology makes use of this. State 2 ways that the products of anaerobic respiration in yeast are used by humans. Baking bread so it makes the dough rise. And another one is brewing of alcohol. So baking bread, brewing alcohol, and another one is biofuels, creating new fuels out of things that are not fossil fuels. 5A1. The sentences in the box describe the feeding relationships between 4 organisms. So hawks obtain their energy from blackbirds, a fig tree carries out photosynthesis, blackbirds are secondary consumers, and caterpillars are herbivores. Use the information in the sentences to write a food chain containing these 4 organisms, and do not draw pictures of the organisms. It's a waste of time. This isn't an art class. This isn't an art exam. You're okay. You just have to write in the words. Okay, you want to write a food chain, not a pyramid or anything like that. Okay, so first of all, we have to start out with the thing that photosynthesizes. So that is a fig tree. All right. Then the next thing along is a thing that eats a fig tree, and caterpillars are herbivores. Not herbivores, writing caterpillars. Caterpillars. All right. Then the next thing that eats the caterpillars, blackbirds are secondary consumers. That means they eat the herbivores. All right. And finally, hawks obtain their energy from blackbirds. They eat the blackbirds. So we could say hawks. Now, which way do the arrows point? The arrows point in the direction the energy is going. So it starts off at the fig tree and goes towards the caterpillars. Then goes towards the blackbirds. Then it goes towards the hawks. All right, there you go. That's it. 2. State the principal source of energy for this food chain. Where did all the energy come from? Well, it didn't come from the fig tree. That had to get the energy from somewhere. It came from sunlight. 3. State the type of organism that gains its energy from dead organic material, and that is a decomposer. All right. B1. A species becomes endangered when it is at risk of extinction. Explain 2 ways in which a species could become endangered. Okay, so it says explain, which means really you should be stating the way and saying how that could make them become endangered. The mark scheme's a bit confusing about this because it doesn't actually say that you need to explain it, but that's generally what you do when it says explain, especially as it says there's 2 ways and it's a 4-mark answer. Okay, so I'm going to say a bunch of different ways that they can become endangered as well. Okay, so first of all, they can become endangered from habitat destruction. So habitat destruction, such as deforestation, removes homes and the food sources of organisms. So I'd say habitat destruction or deforestation is the way, and then how does it make it become endangered? It removes the homes and the food sources. So hunting or poaching can reduce the numbers of species so it has difficulty surviving. So if the numbers are very low and a new disease comes in or a new predator comes in, then the organism is not, then if a few of them are killed, it can make a huge impact on whether the species becomes endangered. So introduction of new species can result in an old species losing resources and being outcompeted. So that's the invasive species idea. Okay? They can result in lack of food and things like that. Okay, so those are 3 good ways. Other things you can mention about lack of food. And so that can be related to the habitat destruction or new species. You can mention a named pollution, so maybe acid rain, or air pollution, or maybe toxic heavy metals going into a lake. You can mention climate change or global warming, changing the habitat. You can mention a new disease. You can mention that sometimes it's hard to find a mate if the numbers are reduced. And you could say that, if there's a new species being introduced, it could increase the number of predators. Okay, so there's quite a few things you could say, but you need to make sure you explain your 2 ways. 2, state one way in which endangered species can be conserved. Okay, there's many, many ways in which endangered species can be conserved. And one way is that people can monitor the numbers of the species to find out what needs to be done, how severe it is. So you can do the monitoring of species. Okay, another thing you can do is you can do captive breeding programs in zoos. Captive breeding programs, they can increase the numbers of the species, and then they can be introduced into the wild quite often. Other things you can say removing predators. You can remove the vectors of diseases, so mosquitoes cause a lot of diseases. You could protect, preserve, or make new habitats. You can educate the population as to why they need to help or how they can help in the conservation of the endangered species. You can, if they're plants you're talking about, they can go into seed banks. You can have DNA banks, and zoos, wildlife parks, conservation areas. They can be very useful in conserving endangered species. You can preserve the embryos, and you can ban hunters. There's lots and lots of things you could put down there. You only want one way, though. I put down 2. You can do many other things. If it says 1, though, you should only put down 1. That's all they want. Question 6. Figure 6.1 shows a section through a tooth. Okay, so A, state the names of structures F, G, and H, and write your answers on figure 6.1. So F, that is the enamel. G is the dentine. And H, well, you can say it's either the nerve, or you can say it's blood vessels, or you can say it's a pulp cavity, because the pulp cavity contains the nerves and the blood vessels. B1, state 2 functions of teeth. All right, so there's a few things you can write down. 1, you can either say, because these are really the same thing, you can say it's to bite, or to tear, or to cut, or to hold the food, or to rip the food. Okay, you could say, so that's one thing you could put down. You could say chewing, you can say it's for grinding, you could say it's for crushing, you could say it's for producing smaller pieces for mechanical digestion. Okay, so bite, tear, cut, hold, and rip. Those are all very similar. Those are really similar processes, chewing, grinding, crushing, producing smaller pieces for mechanical digestion, those are also the same marking point. Another thing you can say is that the purpose is to increase the surface area of the food. So increase the surface area of the food for chemical digestion. And another thing you can say it's for killing prey, defense, and cleaning fur. Okay, obviously you don't put down all of those, you only put down 2 of them. And now you need to describe the importance of teeth in the digestion of food for 2 marks. So teeth create smaller pieces of food so that it can increase the surface area for digestion, chemical digestion, and to make it easier to swallow. So teeth produce small pieces of food in order to increase the surface area and make it easier to swallow. All right, next question. 7. Figure 7.1 shows sections of 2 flowers K and L from the same species. A1. On flower L in figure 7.1, identify and label an ovule and a petal. Okay, this is flower L over here. So an ovule are these small things inside that will become the seeds. So this is an ovule, and the petal is this. It's pretty. The petals are pretty. Oops, only 1 petal. So the petal is pretty. 2. State the names of the parts in figure 7.1 that produce ovules. Okay, the part that produces the ovule, you can either say it's the carpel or the ovary. Ovaries produce ovules, and ovaries and ovules make up the carpel. Okay, that protects the bud of the flower, that is the sepal. The sepal, these little bits down here, those are the sepals. B. On figure 7.1, draw an arrow to represent the transfer of pollen from flower K to flower L during pollination. All right. So pollination. It goes from flower K to flower L. So the pollen goes from the anther to the sticky stigma. All right. That's it. C. A student said flowers K and L are pollinated by insects. Describe 2 structures in flowers K and L that support this statement and use features that are visible in figure 7.1. Okay, things that you can see that mean that it's likely that they're pollinated by insects. 1 is that the petals are large so that they can attract insects. Okay, the insects can see them. Wind-pollinated plants do not need to have big, pretty petals. Okay, another thing is that the stamens are small, and so basically the insects have to brush past the stigma to get to the pollen. And the stigma is inside the flower, so it has a short style. And another thing is that the stigma is wide. It's a wide stigma. It's not all feathery. A feathery stigma, like this, is what it looks like if it's wind pollinated. So let's write that down. So only 2 structures I'm going to say about the petals. So they have large petals that attract insects. And another thing is that the stamens are inside the flower, so the insects have to brush past the stigma to get to them. So the stamens are inside the flower, so insects have to brush past the stigma to get to them. D. Describe the pathway water takes in a plant as it moves from the soil to a leaf. Okay, so water goes from the soil into the root hairs by osmosis. So water moves from the soil through the root hairs by osmosis, and it moves across the cortex and into the xylem. It moves across the cortex and into the xylem. So then it moves up the stem in the xylem by a transpiration pull. So it moves up the stem in the xylem by transpiration pull. And then it enters a leaf by evaporating into the mesophyll cells. It enters a leaf by evaporating into mesophyll cells. So water moves from the soil through the root hairs by osmosis. It moves across the cortex into the xylem. It moves up the stem in the xylem by transpiration pull, and it enters the leaf by evaporating into the mesophyll cells. There. Question 8. During digestion, enzymes act on different types of food to produce simpler substances that can be absorbed. Complete table 8.1 by inserting the missing information. All right. So the food type is protein, the enzyme acting on the food type is a protease, and the simpler substance produced, those are amino acids. Okay, what does amylase work on? It works on starch to produce glucose or sugar. Okay, fatty acids and glycerol are created by the enzyme lipase because they're part of fats, or you could say lipids or oils. Okay, that's it, and that's all of question 8. That's a short question. Question 9. In an investigation, the carbon dioxide concentration in the air above a crop of maize plants was measured for 24 hours. There was no wind blowing during the 24 hours of the investigation. The results of this investigation are shown on figure 9.1. Okay, you can't see the entire graph in one go. On the y-axis, you have the carbon dioxide concentration in arbitrary units. Then you have the time of day. So starting at midnight at 0. Sunrise is at 4 a.m., it looks like. Midday is 12. Lunchtime. Sunset is 1700, which is, no, it's at 17, which is at 5 o'clock. And midnight is 24, which is at 12 o'clock p.m. Okay. A1. State the 2 times on figure 9.1 at which the carbon dioxide concentration in the air was 37 arbitrary units. All right, let's look at this. Okay, so 37 arbitrary units. There we go, there's 37. We go across here. We draw a line across, and then we draw another couple of lines. We draw one line going down here, and we draw another line going down here. Goes halfway between those 2 lines there. Okay, so at 2 times 1 is 2 o'clock, and the other one is halfway between 4 and 6, so that has to be 5 o'clock. All right. So that's 2 o'clock and 5 o'clock. You need both times to get your mark. 2. Calculate the difference in the carbon dioxide concentration in the air between 4 o'clock sunrise and 12 o'clock midday on figure 9.1. Okay, so we have our difference is basically the highest concentration minus the lowest concentration. Doesn't matter if that's final or initial, it's just the difference. Okay, so between 4 a.m. and lunchtime. Okay, so 4 a.m. is the highest point here. You have to keep going up. Is right here. Okay, so if we draw a line this way, if we draw a line this way, the highest peak is 40, and the units are arbitrary units. All right, and lunchtime, the line goes here, so that is 29 arbitrary units, okay? 40 minus 29. So 40 arbitrary units minus 29 arbitrary units equals 11 arbitrary units. 11, and the units are already in there, so you don't even have to worry about that. 3. Explain why the concentration of carbon dioxide decreased between 4 a.m. and 9 a.m. Well, the reason why is because that was when sunrise happened, and at sunrise there's light. When there's light, there's photosynthesis. When there's photosynthesis, that uses up the carbon dioxide and produces oxygen. So the respiration that's occurring, because respiration and photosynthesis happen at the same time, what's happening is that photosynthesis is using up more carbon dioxide than the respiration is producing. So at sunrise, light is available. Carbon dioxide is absorbed so that the plant can do photosynthesis. So photosynthesis is using carbon dioxide faster than respiration is producing it. There we go. B. State 2 environmental factors that would affect the results of this investigation. So we have rain. If it rained, that can affect it. Wind can affect it. Humidity, temperature, whether it's shady or cloudy, that sort of thing. All of those will count. Question 10. Selective breeding of animals is very important to farmers. Many different breeds of sheep have been produced by selective breeding. Figure 10.1 shows a flock of merino sheep. This breed of sheep was produced by selective breeding. Okay, we have some sheep. A. Sheep are important animals in many parts of the world as they produce meat, wool, and milk. Table 10.1 describes some characteristics of 5 different breeds of sheep. So we have Arapawa, Awassi, black bellies, merinos, and Circanas. Okay, and they're looking at the wool yield, wool quality, the meat yield, and the milk yield. All right. A farmer wants to sell both meat and wool. They're not really interested in milk, obviously. Suggest which breed of sheep in table 10.1 is the most suitable for this farmer and give a reason for your choice. All right. So they're interested in the wool yield, the wool quality, and the meat yield. They're not interested in the milk. So we want to find one that's average or good or very good. So the best one here, we have average, average, poor, good. Oh, merino looks good for that one. We have good, poor. No, we don't want poor. Very good. Ooh, that's good. We have poor, no, average, meh, very good. Yeah, that's good. Or good. Good is also good. So it looks like the one that wins out for this is the merino. So that's the merino sheep. And the reason is it has good wool yield, very good wool quality, and a good meat yield. So it has good wool yield, very good wool quality, and good meat yield. So that's the one that they want. B. Another farmer wants to produce a new breed of sheep with both a very good milk yield and a very good quality of wool. The farmer is able to buy any of the breeds of sheep shown in table 10.1. Describe the process this farmer would use to produce the new breed of sheep on her farm. So we need to figure out which sheep this farmer should use and describe the process of selective breeding. Okay, so let's look at this. They want very good milk and very good wool. So milk yield, and they want wool quality is what they want. So very good wool quality with very good milk yield. So it looks like they should cross an Awassi and a merino. So the farmer would cross Awassi and merino sheep. They would select the offspring with the desired characteristics. They would allow these selected offspring to breed with Awassi or merino sheep. And they would repeat this process for many generations. All right, that is the end of this exam. I hope you have found this useful. I really hope you do well on your final exams. And if you've liked it, please press the like button. And we'd also really appreciate it if you'd subscribe if you haven't already. All right, and if you have anything else you'd like to say to us, please write them in the discussion section below. We'd love to hear from you. And have a great day.